In a quiet booth on the edge of Phoenix, I sit across from my husband, Mark, the man who spent 35 years selling insurance and telling me not to worry. I ask him why my name sits on a birth bill, and he smiles the way people smile when they hide something sharp. I press him again, and his voice cuts the air. Elaine, you're confused. Let me handle it. I breathe slowly, but the truth rises anyway. I brought the file he never expected. I open it, slide one page toward him, and say, Mark, I remember everything, and I'm done pretending. For a moment he freezes, and I hear my own heartbeat answer him in the silence. A gentle lie becomes a blade, and a quiet woman chooses to lift it. This is the night she stops being his signature and becomes her own witness. Paper walls, stay tuned. It's coming soon. If you're hearing this story, tell me in the comments. Where in the world are you listening from? Before we begin today's story, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Now let's get started. Elaine Carter sat at her kitchen table, afternoon sunlight streaming through Phoenix blinds. At 62, she moved with the careful precision of a retired teacher. 30 years of managing 8-year-olds had taught her to notice details. The thick envelope felt heavier than usual. Medicare Advantage plans sent thin letters. This one bulged with documents. She opened it expecting routine paperwork. Her recent mammogram, maybe. Instead, the first line made her freeze. Hospital admission, labor and delivery, 3 days. The patient name read Elaine Carter. Her birth date was correct. The hospital was a private women's center across town she'd never seen. I'm 62, not Mary from the Bible, she muttered, but her hands trembled as she read further. The total sat like a stone in her stomach, $38,400 billed, $0 patient responsibility. Every line item described a birth. Epidural administration, fetal monitoring equipment, nursery care services, newborn hearing screening. Someone had delivered a baby under her name. She called the customer service number. The automated menu felt endless. Finally, a human voice answered. Medicare Advantage, this is Janet. How can I help you? I received an explanation of benefits for a delivery that never happened. There's been a mistake. Let me check your account, Mrs. Carter. Keyboard clicks echoed through the phone. I see the claim here. Your husband, Mark Carter, is listed as the authorized representative who signed the admission forms. The words hit her chest. My husband signed what? When you were admitted for delivery, Mrs. Carter. Mr. Carter signed as your responsible party. Elaine stared at her reflection in the kitchen window. She had never been inside that hospital, never been pregnant at 62, never given Mark permission to sign anything on her behalf. I need copies of those admission forms, she said. I'm transferring you to our fraud department, Janet replied softly. The word fraud echoed in the empty house like a church bell tolling. The fraud investigator spoke gently. Sometimes identity theft happens within families, Mrs. Carter. We recommend checking with your spouse first. Then call us back. She hung up and listened to the silence. Mark was on the road selling insurance policies to worried retirees. Same as always. For 35 years of marriage, his absences felt normal. Today, the quiet felt dangerous. She folded the papers carefully as if they might explode. When Mark's key turned in the lock that evening, her heartbeat had changed from anxious to watchful. Hey, honey, he called, dropping his briefcase by the door. How was your day? She looked at the man she'd married at 24. His smile was the same, his laugh lines unchanged, but something behind his eyes felt like a stranger's. Fine, she said, placing dinner on the table. Just the usual. The envelope sat hidden in her purse like a loaded weapon. Tomorrow she would ask him about it. Tonight she would watch him eat pot roast and pretend everything was normal. But nothing would be normal again. Mark laughed too loudly when Elaine showed him the bill after dinner. He smelled like hotel soap and car coffee, the usual road mix. But something sharp flickered behind his eyes. It's a coding thing, he said, waving the papers like junk mail. Hospitals bundle services under the primary policyholder's name all the time. His tone shifted from amused to slightly annoyed. You wouldn't understand, honey. That's why people pay me to deal with this. The condescension wrapped around practiced softness. You know how overwhelmed you get with paperwork. Let me handle it. He stuffed the envelope into his leather briefcase instead of their shared filing cabinet. Elaine watched his hand. She'd known that hand since he slipped a ring on her finger. Tonight it felt like a stranger's. I should probably call them myself, she said. I already took care of it. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Trust me. Later, lying in bed, she heard him talking quietly in the hallway. The words were muffled, but one sentence cut through the drywall. No, it's all under Elaine's plan. They already paid. She held her breath until his footsteps returned to the bedroom. A week later, another envelope arrived. Newborn well checks and pediatric visits. Again, her name topped the forms. Again, Mark Carter signed as responsible party. This time she said nothing. She photographed every page with her phone. "You must be tired lately," she said over breakfast, testing. "All these new clients." "Business is good," he replied, not looking up from his eggs. "People need coverage." At Sunday service, pastor's wife Linda grabbed her arm after communion. "How's Mark's big new client going? That sweet single mother from Mesa." Elaine blinked. "Single mother?" "The pregnant girl he's been helping with insurance. So generous of him to take extra time with her case." "Yes," Elaine managed. "Very generous." In the car, she pressed gently. "You must care deeply about your clients. Going above and beyond." Mark's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "I'm not your student, Elaine. Stop interrogating me." The word interrogating stung more than his volume. She'd never heard him use that tone about her teaching. That night, she pulled out an old spiral notebook from her classroom days. Instead of lesson plans, she wrote dates, amounts, and every sentence that felt wrong. The Mark in that notebook was not the man in their wedding album. 3 more bills arrived over the following weeks. Ultrasounds, genetic testing, birthing classes, all under her name, all with Mark's signature as authorized representative. She called their family doctor. "Dr. Martinez, this is Elaine Carter. I need my complete medical records." "Of course, Mrs. Carter. Any particular reason?" "I want to make sure everything's accurate." When the records arrived, they were clean. No pregnancies, no deliveries, no babies, just routine checkups and her mammogram. Someone was using her identity to pay for another woman's pregnancy. Someone who knew exactly how insurance systems worked. Someone who had legal access to her personal information. Someone who shared her bed every night. Mark came home late that Tuesday whistling. He kissed her cheek like always. Hung his jacket in the closet like always. Asked about her day like always. "Fine," she said, closing the notebook. "Just the usual." But she was building a case now. One page at a time. Elaine knocked on Tyler's door with shaking hands. Her neighbor's son was 30, a paralegal who helped the retirees on their block with forms and documents. "Mrs. Carter, come in. You look upset." She set the growing stack of bills on his kitchen table. "I'm probably being silly, but these don't make sense." Tyler's expression changed as he flipped through the pages. Each bill painted the picture of a pregnancy and delivery that had never happened to her. "This isn't a mistake," he said quietly. "Someone used your identity to pay for medical care. And whoever signed as your representative knew exactly what they were doing." The word representative made her stomach twist. Only family members could sign as representatives. "I know someone who can help," Tyler continued. "Dana Morales. She handles elder financial abuse and insurance fraud." Elder made Elaine flinch. She wasn't ready to see herself that way. Dana's office smelled like coffee and determination. Legal binders lined the walls. Fraud, abuse, restitution. Words that belong to other people's problems. "Tell me everything," Dana said, her voice gentle but focused. Elaine explained the bills, the phone calls, Mark's explanations that didn't quite fit. Dana listened without interrupting. "I need to see your bank statements," Dana said. "Credit reports. Everything financial." "I don't handle those things." Mark always misses. "Carter, that's exactly the problem." They spent the afternoon digging through online accounts Elaine hadn't checked in years. Dana's fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, following trails of numbers that told stories. "Look at this," Dana pointed to the screen. "A home equity line of credit opened 3 months ago." Elaine stared at the signature. It looked like hers, but the E was wrong. Too sharp. Too confident. "I never signed that." "I know. Your husband forged it." The words hung in the air like smoke. Elaine felt her identity split in two, the teacher who had balanced school budgets to the penny, and the confused old woman someone was creating on paper. Dana outlined their strategy. "We document everything. Every bill, every forged signature, every lie. Insurance companies hate being defrauded. They'll investigate." Over the next 6 months, Elaine became a detective in her own life. She photographed documents when Mark traveled, printed emails from the shared computer, copied bank statements he thought she'd never see. The evidence painted a clear picture. Mark was diverting her retirement funds into accounts with only his name. He was using her excellent insurance coverage to pay for another woman's pregnancy and delivery. The woman's name was Rachel. Elaine found their emails by accident when she clicked the wrong tab on their shared laptop. "Elaine's coverage is amazing," Rachel had written. "We won't pay a cent for this baby. Once I get the house," Mark replied, "we'll never worry about bills again." At the bottom of the email chain, Elaine discovered something that made her hands shake: a draft divorce petition Mark's lawyer had prepared. It painted her as forgetful, impulsive, unable to handle complex financial decisions. He had documented late bill payments caused by his own money diversions as evidence of her mental decline. He'd noted her mood swings since retirement, turning normal sadness into a legal weapon. Elaine closed the laptop slowly. For 35 years, she'd trusted him with everything. Now she realized he'd been preparing to take everything. Dana filed complaints with the insurance company's fraud unit and the state insurance commissioner. They opened a confidential investigation. "We wait," Dana said. "Let him make the next move. When he does, we'll be ready." Elaine went home to the house that no longer felt safe. Mark kissed her hello like always, asked about her day like always. She smiled and said it was fine. Like always. But everything had changed. She was no longer the victim in his story. She was the witness building a case. Mark suggested Sunday dinner at their favorite chain restaurant in late November. His smile felt rehearsed. "We should talk about the future," he said, squeezing her shoulder. "It'll be good to have everyone there." Elaine's stomach nodded, but Dana had prepared her. "He's going to make his move with witnesses," Dana predicted. "Let him show you exactly who he is." Their daughter Megan arrived with her husband and 2 kids. Mark's sister Carol slid into the booth last. The server brought rolls. The kids complained about vegetables. It almost felt normal. Mark cleared his throat halfway through the meal. He pulled out a thick manila folder and placed it beside Elaine's plate like a verdict. "I didn't want to do this," he began, his voice heavy with manufactured sorrow. "But your mother has been struggling." The table fell silent. Every word was crafted for an invisible jury. With memory. With spending. With reality. He opened the folder, revealing photocopied bank statements and late notices. He'd caused many of those late payments by diverting funds, but that context was carefully omitted. "I've talked to a lawyer," he said, looking at Megan with pained eyes. "We may need to protect the house from her decisions." Megan's fork clattered against her plate. "Dad, what are you saying?" "She's not the woman she used to be," Mark continued. "The doctor says these things happen as people age." Elaine had never discussed any such thing with any doctor, but the lie sounded believable wrapped in his concerned tone. Every eye at the table focused on her, waiting for tears, waiting for protest, waiting for her to crack under the weight of his accusations. Instead, she took a slow sip of water. Let the humiliation wash over her like a wave, then recede. Every lie he told was another stone added to the evidence pile that would crush him in court. "I know this is hard to hear," Mark said to Megan, "but we have to face facts." Elaine reached into her purse and touched the smooth edge of a flash drive. On it were copies of every forged signature, every diverted payment, every email about using Elaine's coverage for Rachel's baby. Also in her purse was a letter from Dana, addressed to Mr. Mark Carter. It contained divorce papers and fraud charges. Mark was still talking, spinning his narrative about her incompetence. But Elaine had stopped listening. She was thinking about rock bottom. How it wasn't the end of falling. It was the point where you stopped falling and started pushing back. "The house needs to be protected," Mark concluded, "for her own good." Carol shifted uncomfortably. She'd heard these same words about their mother years ago, when their father had tried to control the family finances. Megan looked confused and hurt. "Mom, is this true?" Elaine met her daughter's eyes. "Would you like to see the real financial records?" she asked quietly. Mark's confident expression flickered. "Elaine, you're confused." "No," she said, her teacher's voice cutting through his panic. "I'm not." She stood up, leaving her wedding ring next to his untouched dessert. "You spent years treating me like a signature on your policies. You forgot I was also the person who could tell the truth." The restaurant felt silent around them. Even the kids sensed something important was happening. "Elaine, sit down," Mark hissed. "We can discuss this at home." But she was already walking toward the exit, not as a confused wife, but as a witness who had finally decided to testify. Behind her, she heard Megan's voice. "Dad, what's really going on?" The question would get interesting answers very soon. As Mark's voice droned on about her condition, Elaine's mind drifted back 6 months. Not in confusion, but in sharp sequence, like slides in her old classroom projector. She remembered Dana's office that first day. Walls lined with legal victories. Cases won against people who preyed on the vulnerable. "Insurance companies hate being used," Dana had said dryly. "You're not just a hurt wife, Elaine. You're the victim in a financial crime." They'd filed confidential complaints with the insurer's special investigations unit. Every forged signature, every fake medical claim, every email where Rachel bragged about getting everything covered under the wife's plan. The most surprising ally had been Carol, Mark's own sister. When Elaine cautiously showed her just one email, Carol had gone pale. This sounds exactly like what our father did to Mom before he left her with nothing. Carol had shared her own screenshots, text messages where Mark confessed he was shifting assets before Elaine lost it completely. Messages about using the system to set up his future with Rachel and the baby. Even Megan, torn between loyalty and truth, had quietly forwarded disturbing photos from Mark's phone. Rachel's baby labeled "Our Real Fresh Start," comments about the equity in this house. Dana had built a timeline that looked like a lesson plan. Identity theft leads to insurance fraud, leads to financial abuse, leads to character assassination, leads to planned eviction of spouse. We wait until he declares his intent in front of witnesses, Dana had instructed. The second he tries to have you declared incompetent, we move. You don't scream, you don't argue. You serve papers. Donna had also prepared what Mark couldn't see coming: divorce papers accusing him of fraud, supported by sworn statements from his own family members, plus a separate complaint to the state insurance commissioner about his professional misconduct. Men like your husband depend on shame and confusion, Donna had said. They count on you being too embarrassed to fight back. But you're not embarrassed. You're evidence-based. Elaine had spent her career managing classroom chaos with quiet authority. This was just a different kind of classroom. Mark was just another bully who needed to face consequences. So when he finished his performance about legal options to keep the house safe from your mother, Elaine wasn't broken. She was right on schedule. The teacher in her had always known the most important lesson: preparation beats panic every time. The table fell quiet after Mark's speech. He expected tears, confusion, maybe pleading from Elaine. Instead, she folded her napkin carefully and looked him in the eye. "Are you finished?" she asked softly. The gentleness of her voice made Megan look up in alarm. She'd heard that tone when her mother disciplined unruly students. Mark smirked, mistaking calm for defeat. "For now," he said, tapping the manila folder. "We'll let the professionals handle it from here." Elaine reached into her purse and placed a smaller, neater folder on the table. Dana's precise handwriting labeled the front Carter V. Carter, fraud and abuse. "Actually," she said, "the professionals already started." She nodded toward his phone. "Mark, check your email." He frowned, annoyed, but pulled out his device. Within seconds, his expression changed. Color drained from his face as he scrolled through document after document. Filed divorce petition. Insurance fraud case number. Complaint to the state bar about his license. Screenshots of his emails to Rachel. Sworn statements from Carol and Megan. At the end of the booth, Carol whispered, "Oh my God," seeing her own name as a supporting witness. "Everything you just tried to say about me," Elaine continued steadily, "is already on record about you. The moment you suggested I couldn't manage my own affairs, you gave my lawyer exactly what she was waiting for." Mark's hands shook so badly the phone nearly slipped. "Elaine, we can talk about this," he hissed. The public performance was gone, replaced by raw panic. "Talk," she stood slowly. "Like when you talked to Rachel about Elaine's great coverage? Or when you talked to your lawyer about my supposed mental decline?" Megan grabbed her father's arm. "Dad, what is she talking about?" "Show her the emails, Mark," Elaine said quietly. "The ones where you called me confused and incompetent. The ones where you planned to take my house. Those were taken out of context." "Context?" Carol's voice cut sharp across the table. "Like how you took Mom's situation out of context 30 years ago." The kids stared, sensing the adult tension even without understanding the words. Megan's husband pulled them closer. "You used my insurance to pay for your girlfriend's baby," Elaine said, each word precise as a scalpel. "You forged my signature on loan documents. You moved our retirement money into accounts with only your name. That's not the insurance company has investigators, Mark. They don't like being defrauded, especially by licensed brokers who should know better." His phone buzzed with another email, then another. Each notification made him flinch. 35 years, Elaine said, picking up her ring from beside his untouched dessert. "I trusted you with my signature, my insurance, my future. You turned me into paperwork." She placed the ring in the center of the table, where everyone could see it. "But you forgot something important. I wasn't just the name on your policies. I was also the person who could read them." Mark's confident mask had completely collapsed. "The house is in both our names," he said desperately. "You can't just actually, I can." Elaine's teacher voice was calm and final. "Check your email again." Another document had arrived, a temporary restraining order, freezing all joint assets pending the fraud investigation. "How did you win? I had a very good lawyer." and a very angry insurance company. And your own family as witnesses. Megan stared at her father like she'd never seen him before. Is it true about the baby? About stealing from mom? Mark opened his mouth, but no believable lies came out. The evidence was already public record. I'm going home now, Elaine said. To my house. You can pick up your things tomorrow, but only with supervision. She walked toward the exit, not as a confused wife, but as a woman who had finally stopped being underestimated. Behind her, she heard Megan's voice shaking with hurt. Dad, how could you do this to her? The question would follow him for a long time. 2 months later, Elaine sat in Maricopa County Courthouse, her teacher's notebook open on her lap from habit. Judge Helena Ruiz, a woman in her late 60s with steel gray hair, took the bench. The courtroom smelled like old wood and nervous sweat. Mark sat across the aisle with his attorney, avoiding her eyes. Dana presented their case methodically. Each exhibit landed with the quiet thud of paper on wood. The EOB trail, forged loan documents, diverted retirement funds, email jokes about gaming the system and using Elaine's coverage. Mark's attorney tried desperately to reframe the narrative. Administrative oversights, he called them, misunderstandings about financial management. But his arguments crumbled when the insurer's fraud investigator testified by video link. Mr. Carter used his professional knowledge as a licensed broker to systematically funnel medical charges through his wife's policy, the investigator said. He knowingly misrepresented Mrs. Carter as the patient. This pattern is consistent with intentional fraud. Judge Ruiz leaned forward. How much money was involved? Over $60,000 in fraudulent claims, plus the forged equity loan of $90,000. Mark's lawyer objected, but the numbers hung in the air like a verdict. Carol took the stand next, her voice shaking but resolute. She described how Mark bragged about moving assets before Elaine goes loopy enough that no judge will trust her. The phrase made Judge Ruiz's jaw visibly tighten. He said the same things about our mother, Carol continued. Used her age and grief against her after our father died. I watched him practice this before. Megan followed, tears streaming. My mom is the most organized person I know, she testified. She taught school for 30 years. She balanced budgets, managed classroom supplies, handled parent conferences. He tried to turn her into a problem to be managed. When Mark finally testified, his insurance salesman charm had vanished. Under Dana's precise questioning, his stories contradicted. His timelines blurred. His oversights looked very much like deliberate choices. Judge Ruiz stopped him twice. Mr. Carter, do you understand what perjury means? His answers became shorter. His confidence evaporated sentence by sentence. In 25 years on this bench, Judge Ruiz said, in her ruling, this is one of the clearest cases of spousal financial abuse and insurance fraud I have seen. She awarded Elaine the house, the remaining retirement accounts, and full restitution for the fraudulent loans. Mark's request to be named financial guardian was denied with prejudice. Furthermore, the judge continued, Mr. Carter's insurance license will be referred to the state for immediate disciplinary action. He will assume full financial responsibility for the medical debt he fraudulently created. That meant Rachel's bills, the baby's ongoing care. All of it transferred back to the person who actually signed those papers. Mark's face went gray as the implications hit him. No house, no retirement money, no insurance license, no escape from the debt he'd tried to hide behind Elaine's identity. Walking out of the courthouse, Elaine felt something unfamiliar in her chest. Not joy exactly, but a lightness that wasn't fear. Justice didn't erase betrayal, but it did redraw the balance sheet of her life. The numbers finally added up correctly. Donna squeezed her arm at the courthouse steps. How do you feel? Elaine looked back at the building where truth had finally been told. Like a teacher whose lesson plan actually worked. Behind them, Mark emerged with his lawyer, looking lost and much older than his 64 years. He'd spent so much time underestimating his wife that he'd forgotten she knew how to read the fine print too. A year later, the Carter house looked entirely different. Gone were the boat brochures and glossy insurance magazines. Potted succulents lined the windowsills. Library tote bags hung by the door. A bulletin board displayed flyers from the senior center. Elaine volunteered twice weekly at the hospital's community outreach program, teaching other retirees how to read their medical bills. If something looks wrong, she told them, it probably is. And you're not being difficult for asking questions. Gray-haired faces nodded around the conference table. These were her people now. People who understood that vigilance was the price of dignity. She still received occasional letters about Mark. Updates from the restitution department. Notices about license hearings. Each envelope made her heart flutter briefly, then settle. His choices were no longer her responsibility. Some evenings, when the desert sky turned purple over Phoenix, she sat on the porch with Megan and watched the grandkids ride scooters in the cul-de-sac. The children didn't know the details. They just knew Grandma's house felt safe again. Rachel never appeared in person, but through legal documents, Elaine learned that Mark's new family struggled with debt and instability. There was bitter satisfaction in that, but also quiet pity for the child caught in the middle. Friends at church still whispered about how she took him down in court. She corrected them gently. I didn't take him down. I just told the truth and let the numbers speak. Truth was simpler than revenge. More powerful, too. On her 63rd birthday, she received one unexpected piece of mail. A small card from Carol with shaky cursive inside. Thank you for breaking the cycle our mother couldn't. Elaine pressed the card to her chest and cried for the first time in months. Happy tears. That evening, she opened the old notebook she'd started the day the first EOB arrived. The angry, cramped entries from those early pages gave way to quieter lines. Classes taught. People helped. New recipes tried. She didn't forgive Mark. Forgiveness required remorse, and he'd shown none. But she no longer woke up imagining arguments they'd never have. The empty space he'd left was slowly filling with her own choices. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tyler, the paralegal neighbor who'd helped her find Dana. Mrs. Carter, my aunt received a suspicious insurance bill. Could you take a look? She smiled, typing back, bring it over. I'll make coffee. There were other envelopes sitting on kitchen tables across America, waiting to be opened by people who felt small and confused. Maybe they'd call lawyers like Dana. Maybe they'd fight back like she did. Or maybe they'd just hear her story and know they weren't alone. As she turned off the porch light, Elaine thought about the mailbox by the street. It still read Carter, but now it meant something different. It wasn't just her married name anymore. It was the name of a woman who'd learned to read the fine print.